Chris Mackowski of Emerging Civil War. It is the 25th of May, and 161 years ago, the Battle of North Anna River was underway, mostly skirmishing on this particular day. But of course, most people think of the fighting on May 23rd at Jericho Mills and at Chesterfield Bridge when the battle really opened up. They might think of Hancock walking into Lee's trap on the morning of the 24th, or the fight at Ox Ford in the afternoon of the 24th. I'm actually at the Confederate position that overlooks Ox Ford. You can see Confederate earthworks behind me there, and they extend down that steep hill behind me. I don't know if you can see a glimpse of the North Anna River itself in the woods behind me. But it's such a dominating position. Every time I come out here, I kind of keep thinking about poor Ambrose Burnside, looking at this from the other side, like, oh, I don't think we can make that happen. We'll give it a try, but oh. But today, because it's the 25th, I'm walking out to the far end of the battlefield. Here I'm at the end of the gray trail, but I'm going to walk out to the end of the blue trail, which really tells the story of the fallback of the troops after the battle at Ox Ford, and they fall back to the protection of some earthworks constructed by Crawford's 5th Corps troops. The men from General Ledley's 9th Corps are the ones who kind of get entangled against orders in that fight here at Ox Ford on the 24th in the middle of a pouring rainstorm, and then really kind of get driven from the field and have to find safety. So we're going to walk out there today. It's probably the most overlooked part of the Overland Campaign. Here at the most overlooked phase, which is the North Anna River, but the fighting that really takes place in the 25th, and then as Grant withdraws in the 26th. The armies are in constant contact during that time, but it tends to get forgotten about. But fighting in the woods around here, pretty fearsome at times. So we're going to take a walk. I'm going to pause along my way to pay my respects to Lieutenant Colonel Charles Chandler of the 57th Massachusetts. It's in this area where Chandler is gunned down as he's trying to rally his troops. The 57th kind of off in that direction behind the camera, supported by the 59th behind them. We're kind of at the junction with the 56th Massachusetts off to my rear. And as they're trying to kind of push forward in this ill-fated attack, Mary Harris's Mississippians come flooding out of their works, slamming them into this area, driving them back, even as Alabamians a little further down kind of hit the Massachusetts troops in their exposed right flank. They're backed up by a couple of regiments of U.S. regulars and another Massachusetts regiment, and they're all just kind of falling pell-mell behind. And so it's in the midst of that melee that the Chandler's shot. We're going to go all the way out to the end of the trail here to kind of see what happens to this ill-fated attack by Ledley as his troops try to find some safety. I say this every time I come out here. Man, that is hilly ground. Of every place the armies fight in the Overland Campaign, they get here and it's just up and down in steep, steep ravines. The worst, really the worst terrain these guys are going to face. I come out here because here's where Ledley, they've linked up with Crawford, and Crawford has dug some earthworks, which we can see kind of off in this direction. And it's neat here because on this platform, there's actually a little diagram that shows how these works get rewritten over the course of the 24th, 25th, and into the 26th, as the situation of the ground very fluid as it changes. But Crawford thinks he's coming to Ledley's rescue. He gets here. Ledley's guys are like, oh, thank heavens. But their broken morale really kind of sends ripples through Crawford's guys. And he realizes if Hill continues that counterattack, that they could actually get themselves into some serious trouble out here. So he sends off to reinforcements. But the closest reinforcements are at Knowles Station, about 3 miles away. Remember, Crawford crossed with the 5th Corps at Jericho Mills, which is several miles off in that direction. And so when he comes on the 24th, he's pretty isolated. And so when he links up with Ledley, he doesn't have a lot of support. So when he calls for those reinforcements, on the night of the 24th, 2 6th Corps brigades are going to come and secure Crawford's right flank. And Warren is going to get the rest of his 5th Corps on the road on the morning of the 25th. So Warren's going to get here. The 6th Corps regiments are going to go back to Knowles Station to link up with the rest of the 6th Corps. And then Warren, just sort of looking at the Confederate position, is like, I'm not attacking that. Hill, ensconced in that great position that goes from Ox Ford all the way down to Anderson Tavern, he's not leaving that great position. And so really it's a staring match between the Union 5th Corps and the Confederate 3rd Corps, and neither are going to launch an attack, and so the skirmishing really kind of goes on without any particular purpose to it. It gets nasty and savage in these woods. One of the signs on the way out here talked about Warren's 5th Corps actually sustaining about 150 casualties just in that skirmishing alone on the 25th and into the 26th. Charles Griffin's going to bring in some artillery near the John Matthews house to try to help bolster the federal position here. He's going to drive Billy Mahone's men back just a little bit. But it's just going to be a lot of back and forth without a whole lot of purpose to it. And finally, in the evening of the 26th, Grant's going to pull out and then head over to the Pamunkey River to the east and continue onward toward Richmond. We've got one more little stop we're going to make since we're concentrating on the 25th and 26th today, and enjoy this beautiful day out here at North Anna River. That clatter, by the way, was the sound of my walking stick falling off of the deck. This is the snakiest battlefield I've ever been on, too. I'm afraid to walk through weeds without my snake stick. Success, and no snakes or poison ivy. So for our last stop, we're just going to come down this little nubbin of a trail off the Gray Trail to Gray Trail stop number 10. Talks about an artillery duel. So this is an area that's occupied by the 10th Georgia Battalion. If we were to continue in that direction, we're going to get to the apex of the V. Wright's Georgian Brigade is occupying that whole area. And on the 25th and 26th, this area comes under intense artillery bombardment. There's a ravine right off in that direction, kind of behind the sign. The Florida Brigade is on the other side over there. And off in the plain in that direction is Winfield Scott Hancock's 2nd Corps. They had advanced from Chesterfield Bridge, got caught in the trap that Lee had sent. Because Lee's unable to spring that trap because of sickness, they realize their peril and they kind of dig in. There's going to be some 9th Corps guys that are going to go out there and support them. And as they're trapped out there, the artillerists on this position here are going to open fire on them and harass them. And that was part of the trap that Lee had laid for them. But artillerists from the federal side are going to start bombarding back. And so that duel will continue throughout the 25th and 26th. On the 25th, Federals are going to bring in 3 Coehorn mortars and start bombarding this area. But because these works behind me are so strong, casualties are pretty limited. In fact, across the way, there's going to be one of the artillery pieces is going to get hit and explode, and it doesn't seem like there are even any casualties to that. But this is going to just kind of be part of that ongoing skirmishing and fighting that happens throughout the 25th and 26th as both the armies sort of stare at each other. Federals not wanting to attack those incredible fortifications that the Confederates have, Confederates not wanting to give up those fortifications, and not having leadership to come up with something else or some other way to take the initiative. And so that's why Grant will eventually pull out of here. But, so a lot of activity throughout those days. Doesn't get a lot of attention because the overall casualties aren't super high like they would be if there was an all-out battle. But it is an understudied part of the campaign and really sort of lays the groundwork for Grant to make that next move and gives Grant that incorrect conclusion that the Confederates are spent if he can just get one more swing at him. And that's going to be that swing he's eventually going to take down at Cold Harbor. And since you've been with me this far, I'm going to end with just a few quiet, peaceful seconds down along the North Anna River. I'm Chris Mackowski for Emerging Civil War. We'll see you online and on the battlefield.